Live from deep in an underground bunker in East Tennessee, this is America's premier mortgage field services expert, Paul Williams.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard 2014's first Foreclosurepedia podcast. The Foreclosurepedia podcast presentation of the Foreclosurepedia radio network premieres each Sunday evening at 2100 hours Eastern. You may reach us on Twitter at hashtag Foreclosurepedia, on LinkedIn, in the Property Preservation Consortium, on Google+, that's D. Paul Williams and Foreclosurepedia, on our website, foreclosurepedia.org, and /REO for our newly created Mortgage Field Services Wiki. We're excited about today's guest. You know, today's podcast really dovetails with one of Foreclosurepedia's goals for 2014, which is to begin dialogue within the mortgage field services industry to assist both contractors and vendors in the diversification of their portfolios. My guest today is Bob Steger, National Sales Manager at Advanced GSA. You may reach Bob at 303-690-9043. His email, bstger@advancegsa.com. And we're going to go ahead and pan over here. This is the company that Bob works for. And Bob, are you there?
I am here. How are you doing, Paul?
Oh, pretty good. Can't complain. Wouldn't do any good if I did anyway. But I wanted to thank you for taking time out of your day today to talk to us and the people out there listening about precisely what you do and about what we're going to talk about today, the GSA schedules and such. And part of this, you know, for about 6 months, I've worked with quite a few contractors, moving them over to get them a DUNS number and a SAM account. And those two things really aren't that difficult. They aren't arcane or anything like that. However, GSA, and I'm even a programmer, I have been through the site, and it's one of those things that's it's just deep in mysticism. So I was hoping you might introduce yourself today to those listening, and then after that, maybe tell us, you know, what is the acronym GSA and what is the GSA schedule?
Okay, happy to do that, Paul. Thank you very much for having me today. My name is Bob Steger, and I work with a company called Advanced GSA. We're a company that's held by Argentum Corporation, the holding company, that holds two different divisions. Advanced GSA is one of those divisions. Easy 8A is the other division. And my company specializes in doing government applications. So we do 8A, GSA, woman-owned small business, service-disabled veteran, hub zone, etc., the different types of government applications. But we're here today to talk about the GSA, and the government sure likes their acronyms, so I'm going to try to stop each time I say one to give you what it actually is. The GSA stands for General Services Administration. It is the buying arm of the federal government. It's made up of about 15,000 buyers across the country, and those buyers represent 600 federal agencies. When one of those agencies has a requirement for a product or service, they work with the companies that are on what's called the GSA schedule, and that's just a list of approved companies, and they purchase directly from those companies. They have the ability to purchase up to $150,000 in a direct award capacity, meaning no bidding. Anything between 150,000 and 2.5 million has to be bid, but does not have to be competitively bid. So it means they can just send the bid out to one company if they choose. Once you get on the schedule, the contract between your company and the GSA is good for 5 years, and it's renewable 3 times. So in essence, it's a 20-year contract. Once you have a contract, if you decide to sell the company, the contract goes with the company. So it actually becomes a saleable asset. There are 5 requirements that a company has to meet in order to be eligible to get onto the schedule, and those are: you have to have been in business for at least 2 years, you have to have done at least $25,000 in business over the course of those 2 years, none of the principals or owners can have had a felony, the company cannot have filed bankruptcy, and you cannot resell any finished products from communist countries. So as long as your company meets those 5, then you're most likely eligible to get onto the GSA. The application for getting on the GSA is about 500 pages.
Woo!
The application is written by GSA attorneys, and they revise it every 45 days. So that's why it seems monumental to most people to be able to tackle this application.
If I might cut in really quick there. So we're talking about GSA right now. What I'd like to do is just for a moment take a step back and discuss what would a contractor or a vendor, what would a person, i.e. a company, need to do first to be eligible to go into that process, i.e., DUNS numbers, or those necessary SAM accounts, things like that, sir.
Okay, yeah, you're absolutely correct. You would need to get your DUNS number from Dun & Bradstreet. That's a pretty painless process. You would need to get your SAM registration. That stands for System for Award Management. It's about a 12-page application. That also is not insurmountable. Most people get that on their own. There are currently 650,000 companies nationwide that have a SAM registration. So most people are able to do that successfully without too much problem. You would also need to have your CAGE codes, your NAICS codes, and those are things that you just look up, and it classifies your company's business, so that when you work with an agency, they know what kind of business you're in when you use those classifications. Other than that, at that point, you're really ready as soon as you have the 2 years under your belt.
Okay, very good.
Yep. My processors, my company, Advanced GSA, we've been around for about 13 years. We put about 180 companies on the GSA last year, about 175 the year before. It takes us between 6 and 8 weeks to complete an application. Once we submit it to the GSA administration, right now they're running about 4 months to accept it and award you a GSA contract. So altogether, it takes about 6 months to get on. Once you're on there for 20 years.
Now, when you say your company, our listeners and viewers out there right now are looking at a website that says Advanced GSA, and this is at www.gsaschedulecontract.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Very good. I just want to make sure, because as you're speaking, I'm streaming a lot of this visually, so I appreciate that.
Okay, good. Oh, sure. The average schedule holder does about $2.5 million a year with the federal government using a GSA contract as a vehicle. That's average. Obviously, some people do more, some people do less, but this is really important. The key to succeeding once you get on the GSA is you have to chase the business. They don't come to you. So you need to knock on their door and say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I do, just like you would a commercial account. All 600 agencies have a presence in every state. So right there in your own backyard, you have those agencies available to you once you have a GSA contract. If you don't have a GSA contract, they're going to recommend that you go to the website called FedBizOps. That's what everybody calls it. It stands for Federal Business Opportunities, and it's just fbo.gov, and that's where they list opportunities for people to be able to bid on. You're going to see the vast majority of those opportunities are in the construction industry. So they're building something here or there, and they want somebody to be able to bid on the electrical or as a general contractor or whatever. So probably 75% of what you'll find on FedBizOps is construction related. All new construction takes place through the FedBizOps group. All remodeling, well, I say not all, most remodeling projects take place through the GSA. So if a contractor is looking to get on the schedule, they would be looking predominantly to do remodeling projects as opposed to new construction.
Okay. Let me ask. Let me stop you there just for a moment. So we're speaking in two terms that many of the people out there watching and listening this evening, it may be Greek to them. I'm hearing two terms. One is GSA schedule, and the other is a GSA contract. Would I understand it correctly to be that the schedule, for want of better words, is actually the placement of the company buying through the proper paperwork into the GSA database, for want of better words, which gives them then the eligibility to perhaps submit an RFQ, RFP, RFB, if so solicited. Is that somewhat correct?
It's close, yes. The schedules are actually categories.
Very good.
There are 48 schedules on the GSA, and they're all different categories, and they range anywhere from the automotive superstore to the facilities and maintenance. They have it pretty well defined as to what types of products and services fit under each one of those categories. And then once you get on the schedule, you have a contract between your company and the GSA, and that allows you that buying vehicle with those federal agencies. Those agencies can purchase from you very easily. I have people all the time ask me, yeah, but doing business with the government, it's hard to get paid. When you have a GSA contract, the federal agencies are bound by the Prompt Payment Act, which means they have 30 days to pay you within receipt of invoice.
Right. And it's funny you brought that up. I wrote an article about 8 months ago. President Obama, buying through through OMB, issued OMB Circular 1216, which actually, I mean, the gist of it that I actually interpreted was they want the payment even sooner than that. Now, whether that happens or not, I don't know. But it's odd you said Prompt Pay Act, because it's funny, I just wrote upon that. And I think, and I also want to emphasize that here to our listeners and readers. And by the way, we're speaking with Bob Steger this evening. He's National Sales Manager at Advanced GSA. And most of the people who are listening to me this evening are involved in the mortgage field services industry. And everybody in this industry knows precisely how difficult it is to get paid, if you do get paid, the ethics and morals aside. So that's why I find what you just brought up the compliance with PPA and OMB 1216, et cetera, ad nauseum, that is just a fundamental weight off of the shoulders of the individuals, engaging in the commerce.
Well, small businesses can ill afford what most of, corporate America has done is extended payment terms out to 60, 90 days.
Yes, sir.
And that really makes very difficult for a small business. That's why a lot of small businesses look to get on the GSA, is to shorten up that time frame. I never recommend that a company does all of its business with the federal government. I always recommend that you shore up your commercial business with the business you do through the GSA. The 600 agencies that I talked about, I'll give you an example. I've got a company that we put under the GSA a number of years ago that does about $20 million a year through the GSA, and they do that with 2 agencies. And they tell me that they don't think they have 5% market share with either one of those agencies.
Wow.
So most companies, when they get on the schedule, do business with 3, maybe 4 agencies out of the 600. So it's not like trying to do business with 50 or 100 of these agencies. You're not. You're
right.
Trying to expose your business to as many as you can, but ultimately you're going to do business probably with 3 or 4 of those agencies. Once you get in with an agency, once somebody orders something from you, then you want to shift your focus to doing more and more business with that same agency, because it's a pretty good bet if the IRS office in your town buys something from you, there's a good chance that the other 187 IRS offices around the country could use that same thing.
Exactly, and this is something I also want to touch upon. I did a little due diligence and researched upon you, and you have a tremendous amount of printed material out there, and you've also been on many podcasts and quoted. I want to bring up an article, and it is from it's entitled "The Delex Protest, Section 1331 in GSA Schedule Holders," and it dealt apparently with an interview that you were involved during this whole article. But with that said, there's a quote in here. And incidentally, this is a blog by Bill Jaffe. I may have butchered that name, but
Nope, you're good.
First, the table confirms what we have seen before, that the government is not meeting its small business numbers. They only spent 21% on small business contracts instead of the required 23%. Next paragraph, it's also important to note the big differential between regular small businesses and those who hold GSA schedules, who received 37%. Now, can you elaborate just a little bit upon those numbers? Because I think, while we may look in the singular at the differentiation between 21 and 37 as not being a lot, I think probably when we're dealing with a $40-50 billion industry, and also when you look at federal contracting in totality approaching at least $1 trillion, that's a pretty serious significance, wouldn't you say?
I would absolutely say. Let me explain to you. In the private sector, the Fortune 200 companies, all the big guys, they all do federal contracts. They're required by law to subcontract out 37% of every federal dollar to small business. They typically look to people that have a GSA contract, because that means that you're pre-qualified to do business with the federal government, so it makes it very easy for them to subcontract to you. It's not a mandate. You don't have to have a GSA contract to do that, but you're looked at much differently when you interact with those large companies. I've actually got people that have gotten received their GSA contracts to do business with those private companies, and they do 10 times the amount of business in the private sector as they do through the federal agencies with their GSA contract, but they get that business because they have a GSA contract.
Right.
So, 37, that's a big, I mean, last year, Lockheed Martin did $38 billion in federal contracts. That's $10 billion they have to farm out to small business.
Yeah, and
that's a chunk in anybody's book.
That's a funny story, last year. Now, Foreclosurepedia, the blog, is separate from Foreclosurepedia, the company. Foreclosurepedia, the company, is owned by Crystal Mills, my fiance, and we were reached out to by an outfit. I want to say they're up in the Chicago area called Walsh Construction, and I was surprised because we're a rural company, one-man show, so to speak, out here, and all we really do is cut grass and such. Never in my life would I have thought that you would have the two terms beautification and terrorism in one sentence. However, up in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, they were putting in a new unmanned aerial drone facility, and it needed grass and it needed trees and such. And I asked the I asked the recruiter, whose name I won't mention because I don't have his permission, but I said, how do you come to the determination of reaching out to us? I mean, what's the deal here? At first, I thought it was a hustle. I really did. I thought it was one of these Nigerian type of scams. And he said, here's the reality. The federal law requires that X amount of the portion of the awarded contract must. He said it's mandatory. It must be farmed out to small and very small businesses. So I think that's, so we're a classic case in point. We didn't execute upon that. But, here was a prime example. But I want to take 2 seconds and I want to step back just a little bit. And once again, we're, we're speaking with Bob Steger, Advanced GSA, National Sales Manager. Tomorrow morning, let's say, one of my listeners and viewers says, hey, you know what? I want to get involved, but, look, this is a tremendous undertaking. Now, I'm gonna take the guess here that yourself and Advanced GSA, are you guys a one-stop shop? Can somebody pick up the phone, call you, and say, hey, Bob, let's make this thing happen?
We will take care of it from A to Z. When we contract with a company, we're required to get about 40 to 50 pages worth of data from that company. My average customer spends between 6 and 8 hours gathering up the data that we need to be able to process the application on their behalf. So it's not a big, weeks and weeks kind of time sink, but you can plan on about a full day of just gathering up data. And we're asking for things like last 2 years balance sheet, income statement, sample invoices, a pricing matrix, a list of customers so that we can do an open ratings report. Open Ratings is a division of Dun & Bradstreet, so we send a list of customers to them, and they send out a questionnaire to that company's customers, and the responses are rated, and that rating goes in with an application. So altogether, it's, and then, of course, we need their SAM number, their DUNS number, their cage codes, their NAICS codes, federal tax ID, all that kind of stuff.
And let me stop you right there. Let's say, because I over the past year I kind of opened a little cottage industry, nothing dealing with GSA. But what I started realizing was there's always 1, 2, 3 VA cemetery lawn maintenance contracts, and the reality is if you're cutting grass here, basically cutting grass is cutting grass with a few different dynamics, and I realized a lot of these were open. So I I sat down and I a lot of us met in a round table, and I said, hey, look, a lot of you folks are eligible. These are the only thresholds you really need to get through to become involved. So with that said, tomorrow morning, I don't have a DUNS number. I don't have a SAM account. Can you buying through your company, handle that for me?
We can, but I would typically urge you to take a look on your own to see if that's something you can do without incurring any expense. To take a look at, doing DUNS, pretty straightforward.
Right.
The SAM registration, about a 12-page application, not that big a deal. It takes most people about 45 minutes to go through all that. So it's, I would point them, sam.gov is where you would go and find that. Just Google Dun & Bradstreet, and you will find you can go out and get your number. You do not have to pay for either one of those. Those are both free.
Right. And that's one of the, my email box is flooded on a daily basis with, and I'm not going to mention any names, so I think I'm okay here. But with what I call fly-by-night people wanting to market something that's free and that is available, and it just gets under my skin. Now, in my case, excuse me, for some of the contractors and some of my clients, they reached out to me and they said, hey, look, by the time I calculate the time I'm going to invest in this, why don't you just do this for me and we'll exchange a favor. And so that worked out well. But what I worry about is these companies whom per se may not even be legitimately in the United States. And I researched you guys are here in the United States. Right. I believe the main company, when I'd initially reached out to you, was up in Kentucky, or whomever had reached out to me via that email was in Kentucky. But you guys are domestic, is that correct?
That is correct. And you want to be very careful with who you share private, financial documentation with. And you are sharing that kind of data with the federal government. So I always recommend to people to, do their due diligence and check out. In this day and age, if you do bad business, it's going to be out on the internet somewhere. People are going to find it. And I'm grateful for that. So I tell people all the time, please research my company as well.
I tell you, I don't know how familiar you are with what I write. Some people may not call it writing, but with that aside, I drill down on people and I drill down on companies, and I was hard pressed to find a single negative comment about the company you currently work with. I couldn't find one about you at all, nor could I for Advanced GSA. I want to make sure that's very clear. And a lot of my research deals, from open source intelligence and from my days when I did intelligence. And so with that said, I want to stress, and once again, we're speaking with Bob Steger this evening over at Advanced GSA. I couldn't find anything negative. And I found a lot of positive, which brings me to the next article that we're going to click over here. What we're looking at is an article that's entitled Making Sense of the 95% Goal in Executive Order 13514. And in a nutshell, I think what we're talking about here is we're talking green. And in a nutshell, do you see, with specificity to 13514, does this seem to strike you more as a flash in the pan, or does this seem to have some legs, if you will, in the industry?
We have seen the federal government for about the past 4.5, almost 5 years, really leaning towards people that have green services or products. So if you have something green, you want to make sure that you label it as such, because the agencies are being directed to green the way that they do business.
Really?
So, no, I do not think this is a flash in the pan. I think this is going to come about for some time to come. I'll give you an example. I've got a guy that does solar installation. He does, small commercial solar installations up in a city up in the northern Midwest. And this guy got on the GSA schedule about 2.5 years ago. Right now, he is booked out 11 months is the soonest that you can book this guy to get him to do some installation for you. So that it kind of gives you an idea. The government is definitely going green. You can see it in their mission statements. You can see it. I mean, if you look up any of these solicitations on these government websites, you'll see they've got green all over them. No, I don't. I definitely do not think it's a flash in the pan.
Excellent. Aristotle opined, where your talents and the needs of the world cross lies your calling. And just speaking with you via email, speaking with you via phone, and now this evening, on the Foreclosurepedia podcast, I think that's the epitome of what you and your company represent. The world, i.e., the government, does have a need. It has a need to have services rendered. And I believe that there are contractors and vendors out there, very specifically in the mortgage field services industry, whom have the ability to submit those services and or those products. And your guys' calling, I believe, is the ability to examine those aggregated data sets and to mesh and to bring to fruition, the end game, of the both. And so I just wanted to say that, and I want to ask a couple of quick questions, and I'll let you go. Once again, we're with Bob Steger. So we're here at Advanced GSA. Excuse me. Within the mortgage field services industry, predominantly we're talking about foreclosures by and large, and we're talking about two subsets of the foreclosure industry. We have, for example, the FSM, the Field Service Management, and this is a HUD, a United States Department of Housing and Urban Development coin term. So we have FSM, which is predominantly the physical work on the properties, and then you have the AM, the asset management, and herein we're dealing with the brokers and the sales of the products. Within GSA, when we look at those two categories, are there comparable schedules within GSA, i.e., and this is actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I heard was that the last HUD M&M contract 3.0, I had heard that part of the asset management solicitation actually went out through GSA, and then now that we're coming into what I call just the quagmire of 3.7, it may or may not have to be regenerated. But anyway, on those two categories, are there comparable schedules or categories within GSA?
Most companies in your industry get on the facilities and maintenance schedule. It is a very wide net of products and services offered into the maintenance and management of government facilities. And so, that's where FEMA goes to hire people when there's a disaster. That's where HUD goes to look for companies that are in a position to be able to do business. You have to understand that if an agency puts something out to bid on the FedBizOps site, the average turnaround time for them to receive service is about 90 days.
Okay.
When they purchase through the GSA, the average turnaround time is 7 to 10 business days.
So when and this would probably be a sub question of that. I'm ex-military, and but years ago, whether it was in the infinite wisdom or infamous wisdom, we had a thing called BRAC, and I think the acronym is something like the Base Realignment Commission. So we spun down all these military bases, and the big headquarters for all that is up in Fort Belvoir. I was thinking to myself that a lot of the skill sets that are prominent within the mortgage field services industry, i.e., cleaning, documentation, rehab, et cetera, ad nauseum, I would think that within GSA, these type of skill sets would probably transfer, across. Is that correct?
That is accurate. Absolutely. Let me give you another example real quick, Paul.
Sure.
I've got a guy who is in the janitorial business. He's down in the Atlanta area. Been in this business, had this business 19 years, I think, pushing 20. And he really struggled, but he finally decided to get on to the GSAs on that 03 FAC, which is the Facilities and Maintenance Schedule. He told me that after about 7 or 8 months of being on the schedule and knocking on some doors, that he no longer has any personnel available to service his commercial accounts.
Wow.
It doesn't take, but the one thing that I really want to make sure that all of your listeners, viewers, pay attention to is when you get on schedule, you have to chase the business. And the common denominator of these people that are succeeding are all people that aren't afraid to knock on a handful of doors to get their name out there.
Does your company, do you guys have liaisons whom, if a company saw so fit, can you execute upon that on behalf of a company?
We can. We have an optional marketing division that will market your company's services or products directly to those agencies, and we do that on a straight commission basis. If we don't get you any business, you don't pay us anything.
Sure.
But it's a good way for you to learn who those contacts are in a relatively short amount of time.
And I tell you, for those listening tonight, let me tell you, whereas many people think in terms of knocking on doors to be synonymous with Facebook and making friends, it is not. Those Beltway Rolodexes, those, my friends, are some of the most difficult ones to get inside of, and they rank only second to many offices where I used to work up on K Street in Washington, D.C. But, ladies and gentlemen, we've been speaking with Bob Steger this evening. He's the National Sales Manager at Advanced GSA. You may reach Bob at 303-690-9043. His email, BSTEGER@ADVANCEGSA.com. We're going to make sure all this information is embedded on the last 25 seconds of the podcast. You can see his, his company's website right here. And in closing, is there anything that you would like to say to folks this evening, and what might best facilitate the most direct participation between those listeners whom want to engage in business with you and they?
Okay. Well, the most important thing is to decide whether or not you want to do business with the federal government. If you seriously do, and that's part of your plan, the GSA probably makes good sense. we would be more than happy to do an evaluation free of charge to tell you whether or not it makes sense and in what kind of return, how quickly you would see a return on the investment to get onto the schedule. So it's really no risk to at least investigate.
Well, excellent. And if you'll just hold on a moment, I'm going to go ahead and close out the podcast, and we'll speak just a little bit. But ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. You're looking right now at Advanced GSA. We've been speaking with Bob Steger this evening. You can see what we spoke about this evening. This is the GSA, the United States General Services Administration website. A lot of data there. We have the D&B website, wherein you will go through a small process to get your DUNS number via the web. We also spoke about contracts. Many of you all in my articles know I speak about fedbizops.gov all the time. It is right here. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This has been the first podcast of 2014 for the Foreclosurepedia podcast. I'm excited. I think this is the direction we're going to go. I am telling you, ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it whatsoever. When I look into that crystal ball, diversification is the name of the game. We have gone from a 13% distressed portfolio down to 2 to 3%. But regardless, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free. Give me a shout out. COO@foreclosurepedia.org. Thank you.